Hello and welcome to My View from the Piano Bench. We do this on Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. here on my Joel Holt's Notes YouTube channel, in addition to Piano for My Friends on Thursday evenings. You likely know the drill and the difference between the two. I talk more than play on Wednesday nights, and I really don't talk at all on Thursdays. And if you know the drill, you'll know that the support page of my website is linked in the description. Thank you to those of you who do support and encourage me that way. It, in effect, sponsors these videos. So thanks for allowing me to keep it going. If you watch with some regularity and haven't considered that, I'll ask you to take a look. The Patreon option is a simple tip jar application like the others, except this is recurring, and recurring support such as that will elicit from me a thank you email each month with exclusive audio or video content, often behind the scenes and inside the process. So lately I have been choosing as topics, oftentimes, song titles that give me the opportunity to reflect out loud about those particular tunes. Not so much like this tune was written in blah 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 by this person in their bathroom, in between, that kind of stuff that you can look up. Just how it relates to me, and not even necessarily about the tune, but just things that will bring the mind or directions it can take me. It's a turn I've taken in the last few months, and it seems to be working. So the title or the topic for today is C Jam Blues, or Duke's Place, but typically known as C Jam Blues. And so on and so forth. Now at this point I'm just improvising on a jazz-tinged blues progression. I have never heard it put exactly that way, but I think that works, and I'll explain that in a minute or four. And I didn't want to keep going because I didn't want to obscure the fact that this tune has two notes in it as far as the melody goes, and that's it, two notes. Even one-note samba has more than two notes. When you get to the bridge, it kind of goes all over the place. But this one, and again, and again, that's the melody. Now, this tune becomes my illustration when somebody asks me a question like, what's your favorite song to play? And I just say whatever I happen to be playing. Or when somebody says, I don't like that tune. It's not hip, it's dumb, it's stupid, it's got three chords, whatever. And I say, well, there is a tune that every jazz musician plays, and it only has two notes in it, and I don't hear anybody complain about that one. I'm sure people do, but it kind of is used. I kind of use it to make my point that playing music is simply in the moment, and every song or tune is an opportunity. So let me start with that theme. Every song is an opportunity. An opportunity to, of course, improvise and make up new things. And then somebody might say, well, that tune doesn't have so much going on, so it's kind of lame, so there isn't much opportunity there. So, well, I really think the opportunity is to be in the moment. And the moment provides its own opportunity. And if you bring an agenda or a preconceived idea to the moment, you are at best shortchanging the moment and more likely just eliminating that possibility, and you're just kind of plowing ahead with whatever you construct. And I come back to that Keith Jarrett quote that I've come back to again and again, that essentially says, when I sit at the piano, my hand knows what to do. When I try to tell it what to do, I'm stopping it. And when not only am I stopping it, I'm stopping it from doing something better than I can think of. And I think that's well put. If I can think and say something along those lines. Verbal communication and musical is very similar in a lot of respects and different in others. So I'm not thinking about, oh man, what am I going to do with this? I'm just because where that leads you in that sort of blues feeling is playing blue or blues notes. You have that blues scale that I talked about previously. So it kind of comes across like blues. Or does it? So let me leave the tune as an opportunity over here. I might come back to it. I'm not going to make myself a flow chart. I'm just going to go where it takes me, be in the moment. And now bring up the idea of blues, which is the larger subject here. Blues, for many, many people, particularly those that were not musicians, which would be most people, evokes a feeling or a style. You think like a B.B. King or whoever is your kind of blues touch point. And there are different sort of styles in the evolution of the blues, but you recognize it all when you hear it as blues. Right? And that style, yeah, blues. But when musicians are talking about blues, they're more often talking about a form of a song. There is something called song form, which is different, so I can't say a type of song form, but a form that you place things in, independent of what style you play. And sometimes that verbiage kind of doesn't pass through the, what do you call it? There's a word I'm looking for, but whatever the blood-brain barrier, I don't know, but some thing between musicians and people say, well, that's not blues. Well, yes, it's blues. So what defines C-Jam blues as blues is not that it sounds like B.B. King or whoever, but that it has a particular structure. So I'll say that word instead of form. And that structure is to have 12 measures, or 12 bars, 12 bar blues. Let's back up a second, and my brain's going all over the place, which is good, I think. So the bar that musicians refer to Well, there's that bar that musicians so often refer to, but the bar in music is that grouping of however many pulses or beats, right? And typically 4, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 6, 2, 3, 4. So if you were counting along when I stopped counting, it's difficult for me to try to play and then try to say something about what I'm doing. It's easier for me to have a conversation or talk about something totally unrelated to what I'm doing, which I've talked about before and may talk about again. That's the same subject, really. So you could go back and listen to what I played. You can count the measures. 2, 3, 4. Like I said, I think I stopped counting around 5 or so. But you can take it through, and it's 12 bars. And those 12 bars just repeat, 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 repeat. And the blues is pretty much the simplest harmonic thing to get into if you are learning jazz. So jazz students learn the blues first, or learn the blues scale. As I pointed out, I think, recently, the traditional blues scale has been, by some people, amended by one extra note, which allows it to be a 7-note scale, which takes up the same kind of rhythmic space as a major scale, but it's not a major scale. And technically you could say I cheated because I played a note that wasn't in the blues scale toward the end, but for me, improvising is not about playing notes and scales, but the scales are certainly vessels to house particular feelings or functions, and there it is. Your most basic blues has 3 chords in it. And now I'm going to move from the key of C to the key of G for a specific purpose that I'll mention in a second. Exception of what you would call turned around, that at the end, where you can analyze it in terms of multiple chords. That particular basic version of the blues is 3 chords. The chord we call the 1 chord, which sometimes goes for 4 measures, 4 bars, and we're in the 4th. Now, the 4 chord, chord, 5 chord, 4 chord, okay. And that form really lends itself all the way through to playing that kind of blues scale stuff. And key of G I went to because that's a more guitar friendly key, and that's a whole nother subject about guitar-centric keys versus orchestral keys. Now, a guitar can play in any key, and an orchestra instrument can play in any key. And by that I mean the traditional instruments, that you blow into or pluck strings or, throw air through pipes or whatever. But the way the guitar is set up, in terms of what they call the open strings, where you don't have to use fingers for anything, it's very friendly to, if you're looking at the piano, keys that start on white notes, right? As opposed to keys that start on black keys, which are typically keys notated in flats. Because what often happens is you don't have any open strings, and then everything has to be, in some keys you have to really kind of get a little complicated. I'm not a guitar player, but if you want to just pick up a guitar and learn some chords and start playing tunes, in all likelihood, especially as a beginner, you're not going to be playing in flat keys, you're going to be playing in sharp keys. In that realm of blues, you're, in some respects, and I say this gently, because I'm not taking away from the musicianship or the level of talent that goes into it, but the vocabulary is more limited. You can pick up a guitar, learn a few chords, and you can just start doing stuff. As opposed to like the jazzified version of anything, including the blues, that actually requires, a certain level of attainment to get there. So the point I'm making is the blues starts out very basic. You can hear B.B. King or whoever. Now, sometimes at the beginning, we'll stick the 4 chord in the second measure. Now, you might not be familiar with 1, 4, and 5, and that's fine. But just know that those 3 chord types are representative of the 3 different things the chords will do. So harmony either helps you depict that you have tension, movement that needs to resolve. So there's tension, there's resolve, and there's traveling to that point of highest tension. Blues kind of messes everything up though, because it's kind of all tension all the time. But when I say 1, 4, 5 chords, it's just the 3 kind of types of chords. 3 specific chords. The chord built on the first note of the scale, the 4th note, and the 5th note. But also 3 types of chords that you can like substitute for it, and you can make changes, and then you start getting into the jazz vocabulary or the classical harmonic vocabulary when you do that. But everything in music is ultimately about managing tension release and the stories that weave in through tension release. I always come back to that as a foundation for everything. And at a very basic, gut human level, the blues expresses that. Heavy on the tension, light on the resolution, but it gets there, right? Now, jazz players will play, and G.G.'s not a bad key for orchestral instruments or jazz music. It's kind of one of those keys that both sides can kind of agree on. If you're playing with like a rock guitar player or a blues guitar player, and I'm a piano player, it's like G kind of gets, you land there quickly because everybody's comfortable with G. So I'm going to play C jam blues in G. So C jam blues is often played in C, but it's the easiest tune of all, pretty much, to move around whatever key you want. Because how many notes does it have in the melody? 2. But in terms of the harmonic component, and what you improvise on, it could actually be very complicated, or it could be very simple. And I talked about the simple. Now here's a little detour, and I already forgot what I put over here, but that's fine. Here is something to consider, that whatever harmony or chords a song has, it is derived from the melody itself. The melody actually suggests it. And especially when the melody is, complicated, it really takes you specific places. When the melody is not complicated, you can write your own ticket, just about, or at least to some extent. So a few harmonic changes. I'll stay in G for the minute. So I stuck a 4 chord in the second measure. And now you start doing this turnaround. And you start getting, dominant 7, minor 7, blah, blah, blah. And it never gets super complicated, but it is the case, and here's the point, that there's no one set way that musicians play blues. You kind of have to figure your way around in the context. So what I did with this basic 3-chord blues in the key of G is one template. And what I'll do, I'll go back to C for C, G, and blues. What I did there is a different template. I start with 1, 4, 5, but then I start doing these, what we call 2-5 maneuvers. And this is straight out of the bebop evolution of jazz. And you can kind of look right at Charlie Parker and other people. But if you're going to look at one person, to me, it would be Charlie Parker. And of course, all this is subjective, so I'm not giving you, God's word on the subject. It's just, for my view, Charlie Parker is a good codification of the bebop vocabulary. And his particular device is your 2-5-1, which in the key of C is D minor 7, G7, C, and you move it around different keys and use it in secondary relationships in songs, which just means that you have the ability to pull harmony from different places into a key, and that's what makes it interesting. Now, what makes the blues interesting is you're not really pulling different harmonic constructs in. You are pulling altered scale notes in to an extreme. All right, now, but half the notes I played there were not in the key of G. And so that those would be like notes that provide, excitement or interest. Of course, after a while, it could feel like, a parade of one-trick ponies, right? Because you're not doing subtle things. You're not changing the texture or the context a whole lot. You're just sounding bluesy, which is great. On the other side, it's about basically different choices or directions you can go, and makes the conversation more nuanced. Let's say it like that. So. And here's the big change. Right? But not just because of the style that I'm playing, but because of the note choices that I'm making, or the chord choices, it actually becomes kind of a different animal. And then you listen to that and you say, well, it sounds like blues, but it's not really blues. Well, yeah, I'll give you that. Again, for musicians, blues is a form, a 12-bar form. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, and then off you go. Now, I like to say that blues is really a 24-bar form. It's the 12 bars twice, especially if you're like playing over it, you're expressing, you're saying the first thing, I'm improvising. It doesn't feel like I'm done. I'm just continuing. It actually feels better to end it after 24 bars than 12 bars. And especially in soloing. So a lot of times when a blues head is played, in CJM blues, it's played twice before people start improvising on it. And even though I am playing the more nuanced chord progression, I can still fill it up with blue or blues notes. So there's a particular YouTube video that to me is really interesting. It was probably a rare time for Bill Evans to be part of a jazz festival piano camaraderie cluster thing where you had 4 pianists on 2 pianos playing a blues form. In this case, it was Charlie Parker's Billy's Bounce. It was a bebop influenced blues, harmonically similar to how I play CJM blues. Look for Bill Evans, Bill Evans, Billy's Bounce. And you should be able to find a video where there's 4 pianists on stage. And you listen to them go through their solos, and they're all, fine. John Lewis was one of them. I think Mary McPartlin was one. But when Bill Evans solos, he just doesn't even go to like, I'm leaning on blues because it's blues. And he's just, that's to me one of the best examples of taking a form like the blues and just composing through it. And so arguably he makes it sound like not blues at all, but just a beautifully constructed Bill Evans thing. So it's interesting to watch, especially in contrast with some of the other solos in there. So I had considered calling this topic bluesy with a question mark, like jazzy, like I did that. But I really wanted to reference primarily CJM blues. Now, in terms of playing this tune, one place is often used is like a break or a chaser. So something fast, something easy. While the big applause is going on, and yay, and thank you, and The entertainers leaving the stage and the bands. Come out for an encore or a bow. Is the crowd still going? And you can hear that, or imagine that, I'm sure. And again, I'm going to come back to the idea that I hear jazz musicians all the time complaining about whatever tunes they want to complain about. I've never heard a complaint about CJ and blues. You know, which is as simple as it gets. It's, you know, You're Cheating Hard is arguably more complicated than CJ and blues, at least on some level, in some respects. I remember one musician I was playing, perhaps a duo gig with a bass player, you know, saying that the song he hated the most was Satin Doll. I'm like, why would you hate Satin Doll? Maybe you're not, you know, it's not your favorite song, or it's not your go-to, but why would you hate it? And his answer to that was, well, and this would be true, I can see this, that this is a song that's really drilled into you in jazz education because of how it's constructed. And after a while, you just get sick of playing it. Really. You know, basically, it's not interesting anymore. It's the same old thing. Well, you're going to tell me a tune with two notes is not another version of the same old thing? And of course, that makes sense to me. I do understand it. And it's pointing to the approach to music as being more cerebral, and you want to find interesting things. And I guess with the blues, you can just go wherever you want. So I'll do that for a minute. I'll change the key. I'll play in B flat. So what if I took that blues form and did it as like a slow stride? And it kind of has that bluesy sound, right? So when you're playing bluesy, it's not necessary to just play a straight blues progression. There's all kind of variations on it. The common theme is that it tends to be more harmonically active, more tensions that don't necessarily resolve. So while I'm playing that, I'm thinking of Precious Lord, Take My Hand, the Thomas Dorsey tune. Right? And he was a blues pianist, accompanied great blues singers, and then turned to Christianity and began writing hymns in a blues style. Not necessarily the blues progression, but things related to it. So you can hear the blues in something like Precious Lord, Take My Hand if you play it that way. So all of that kind of gets folded back into Well, I haven't heard this for a long time, so I'm going to be commenting possibly in error, but I'll do my best here. Dave McKenna would have a thing where he would take C jam blues and he would move all around the keys. And I don't know what method he took for that. I can take like one particular method and let's go around the keys. Because it doesn't matter if you play it in C or not. And I'll just more stick to the melody. That was D, C, F. Keep going. And while I'm playing that, the tune The Birth of the Blues comes to mind, which is all about the feeling and not about the form. And if you take one thing away from this, is that the idea of blues can really have a broad meaning, and it starts with the emphasis on either the style or the emphasis on the form of the music, which can be played in any style. But you talk about blue notes. And they're really kind of absent in Birth of the Blues. And so it's interesting that that song references the blues, and it's more just like a Great American Songbook tune. But I haven't played it in forever. Let's just see what happens when I do. Ah. Now this one's a soft to it. Interesting that when I did solo on it, even though the tune itself doesn't have a lot of that built in, as far as the bluesy thing, it's lyrics are about the blues. You tend to play it bluesy. I was going to say whatever that means, but I think it's definable. I could sort of play it bluesy when you improvise on it. In contrast to well, whatever other tune you play, that you don't necessarily play bluesy. I have one in my head, and now I don't recall what it was. What about this? Just take that first phrase. If I improvise, and there are certainly blues elements in there, but less so than I would put in Birth of the Blues, or I would just put in the blues in general. Duke's Place, and I don't know the full lyrics, but that becomes Duke's Place, where those words are, in the lyrics that singers will sing. And I've got to assume that the lyrics came later. You can find lots of examples, Ella being one that comes to mind, that sings Duke's Place. And I'm almost positive there's YouTube examples, at least one, of Ella singing Duke's Place with Duke Ellington on piano. I don't know if Duke Ellington or Billy Strayhorn is, associated with or connected with or listed as the composer for this. And I'd say, well, they probably wouldn't care because it's like nothing to be proud of. But I can't say that. Well, nah, I won't go there. Never heard it done this way. Interesting to do that slow. Ha! Kind of becomes like a little darling. How slow can it go? Surprised Basie didn't record it this way. Maybe he did. And it kind of makes it easier to get that blues stylistic feeling. Yeah, I would play around with that. I can tend to speed things up much more easily than I'll slow them down. So creating a slow tempo like that, I have to make sure I can sustain it. My understanding is that one of the classic Count Basie really slow tunes. Yeah, that's slower. I'm already speeding it up. Right? Little darling, classic slow. Boy, was I surprised to find out that Blossom Dearie did some things ridiculously slow. Which might work, better in some cases, at least when there's a vocalist singing. Speaking of Blossom Dearie, at some point in the not too distant future, I'll address that again in these videos. At some point, I'll be able to get Sharon and I in one place with an hour to spare, so we can have a conversation for one of these. Because being introduced to any new musician brings you into new possibilities and new things that you haven't thought of, because everybody has their own unique thing. And Blossom Dearie certainly did. And one of her little signature things was to play something ridiculously slow. And you're going to see more about that project. I'm going to link some of the things to my Facebook page from the Blossom Dearie Project Facebook page. But even if you're not on Facebook, look at my website once in a while. And there is a Blossom Dearie Project page on there that Sharon and I actually share. It redirects to a page on her website from mine. You can see what's going on. But another thing I thought of to mention is my First Friday series at the Mainstay, which begins the week you're watching this video in 2 days. And I have a wonderful DC jazz pianist, Alan Johnson, coming, and we're going to do a 2-piano thing. And he is going to be all over that soulful feeling. So, in fact, what I suggested to Alan in email, and he seemed to be enthused about the whole thing, was to open with C-Jam Blues. And I'm thinking like there's a way to do it Oscar Peterson Trio-esque. And if you're interested in hearing two contrasting versions of that, one is on the track from the Night Train CD, which I think was late 50s. And you can, of course, look these up on YouTube. So pick the one that as the video image is just a still of the album cover, Night Train. And listen to that C-Jam Blues, which is like really fast and has all these licks that pianists practice. Can I play it clean? Right? And it goes at least that fast. And if you were a pianist, it's not that difficult to find online a transcription of that entire piece the way Oscar played it. And so if you're a musician and you want to learn some like blues things, download that transcription, find it. You might have to pay for it depending on where you go. And then there's a certain part of the 4 phrases, maybe 4 times through, I should say, the beginning of the tune, where there's breaks. And this is the first one. Here's another one. Right? Learn them. Pick little things from that and practice them slow. And then maybe move it to another key. Whatever it is. Now, I don't actually practice this around the keys, this particular. I probably should, but the point is, there's your blues. So where I was going was, it would be really fun for Al and I to open with that tune and just trade back and forth. Oh, I was telling you about the 2 videos. One is the Night Train CD, and the other is a nearly 10-minute video. It's a live concert that's almost certainly an encore. And it's slower. Other signature iconic Oscar Peterson licks in that. There's a drummer, what's his name? I don't remember. But he has a YouTube channel with tutorials, and he calls, you can probably search for this and find it, the most swinging video on YouTube. And he references that and he talks about it, which is interesting. So if you're a musician and happen to play the blues, be aware that there are different harmonic approaches. The jazz approach and the more traditional approach. And even if you just primarily play one, learn the others. You know, there's always stuff to learn, right? And if you don't play, you just listen. Enjoy whatever it is you're listening to. Be in the moment, like I am. Hey, did I mention it's easy to talk while I'm playing? I guess I'm demonstrating that. What should I talk about? Because I don't have to think about what I'm doing, so I can think about what I'm talking to you about. What am I going to talk about? Oh, right, you can't hear me. Oh, well. There we go. One last thing, a little bit of clarification. I was actually adding each chorus 4 bars to the 12-bar form. If you were there with your scorecard trying to keep track, which is what Oscar does on any version of Night Train, not Night Train, C-Jam Blues that I've seen him, heard him play. After he states the melody, he'll do a 4-bar stop thing just on the one chord. Then he starts to form. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and there's another break. We start the clock over again. So, in case you were counting and you were going to message me, those last ones had 16 bars. That's not the blues. Well, it's all the blues. And yeah. So hopefully you found this interesting. It's interesting for me to go and see where these things take me. Thanks for your engagement and your interest. And if you have a suggestion of something, I can't guarantee that it'll work for me, at least in the short term. But I can maybe work toward it, or, let's just stay connected. I love that we can communicate. So thanks so much. See you tomorrow night for Piano for My Friends. Yay.